Well, it's no secret that Afghanistan is one of the top drug-producing nations in the world, but a new study released by the UN indicates it may also be one of the top drug consumers, with drug addiction growing at an alarming rate. Joining me now with more about this from our New York studios is RT correspondent Marina Portnaya. So, Marina, Afghanistan's Deputy Minister of Counter-Narcotics says his country is facing a national tragedy. How bad is the situation?
Well, Priya, it does sound pretty bad if you take into account the new study that was released by the United Nations, a study indicating that 1 million Afghans between the age of 15 and 64 are addicted to drugs. That's roughly 8% of the country's population, and according to this UN study, it's twice the global average. Now, this report is titled Drug Use in Afghanistan, and it also indicates that parents in Afghanistan routinely give opium to their children, and it's more often women that are giving out opium to their relatives. Now, according to this UN study, Afghans are taking these drugs, various drugs, as a way to self-medicate against the hardships that they're living through. What are those hardships? 3 decades of war, living in the poorest country in the world, still living through a war, and obviously this is a problem that is on the rise there in this country, according to the United Nations, and it's a problem that seems to be growing and not being addressed as properly as it should be.
But, you know, the problem of opiate addiction spreads far beyond Afghanistan's borders. I mean, how much of an international effect does it have?
Well, according to another UN report that was released about world drugs, Afghanistan's neighbors, such as Iran, Pakistan, the former Soviet republics of Central Asia, those areas consume the majority of opium. That's where the majority of opium is consumed from, if you gather from around the world. That's because they're considered what is called a transit country, where the opium is moved through, or drugs coming out of Afghanistan is moved through, and possibly there's not enough money and there's not enough law enforcement to prevent these drugs from moving from one country to another. Now, according to the UN, opium and heroin kills about 100,000 people a year, but according to UN statistics, 30 to 40,000 of those victims are Russians, and this has obviously caused Russia to pay a lot of attention and hold a lot of conferences about this issue. It's a growing issue. According to reports, not as many Soviet soldiers were killed during the war in Afghanistan as there are now Russian people being killed from using heroin or opium each year. So this is a problem that, of course, is being born in Afghanistan, but is spreading all over the world, and of course is victimizing a lot of people.
Wow, really interesting kind of to see that comparison. But Marina, who's to blame for this problem?
Well, I think there's 2 answers I could give you. According to the problem in Afghanistan, with addiction on the rise now, 1 million Afghans being addicted, UN officials say that there's no treatment available for any of the people there. So many people want treatment, but it's not accessible. It's not available for them. And that's why drug use continues to rise. Now, as far as the drugs spreading and more people around the world getting hooked on heroin and opium, critics say that since NATO forces invaded Afghanistan in late 2001, opium cultivation has increased reportedly 40,000%. And they're believed that the NATO forces, U.S.-led NATO forces, have not done enough to address this problem. And the Afghan government, some critics say, is too weak to counter the narcotics growing there, the narcotics that are spreading around the country and being moved out of the country. And lots of money being made on this business, legal business, but obviously it's affecting the world.
Well, that's RT's Marina Portnaya reporting live in our New York studios.